Dr. Virginia Albert-Poyotte, thank you for joining us here at the lunchroom.
Good afternoon, colleagues. In for lunch, but I wonder what the menu is.
Well, indeed, and I think the menu is going to be about Babonneau, and of course, talking a little bit about how you see things right about now. I mean, of course, you're a first-time candidate. You're going up against somebody who may consider himself by now a veteran, and he is Mr. Ezekiel Joseph, and I think he has run about three elections right about now for that and that same constituency of Babonneau. He's won 2, he's lost 1, and he's going up against you now in a very interesting constituency that has become a bit more of a fair weather constituency of late, although it has traditionally been during the days of Mr. Alan Bousquet a stronghold of the United Workers' Party.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in fact, I have been involved in education for many years, but I've also played my part in the political arena, but more behind the scene and supporting other candidates who have gone out there to make their contribution. So the politics are not new to me. It's just that I'm first-time candidate. And I must say, one of the main reasons why I decided to take that decision is because the people in the Babonneau constituency, actually, they had been calling on me for decades. And I felt, well, there were other people who could have represented them, and there are other ways I could have represented them, so I chose to do that. But right now, they told me it's either I take it or I forget about it. And therefore, I had to take that instruction from them. They asked me to give them a stronger voice, and they are asking for better representation for Babonneau. And they are very confident that I will be able to give them better representation in Babonneau. But politically, I worked with Kenneth David John when he contested the election. I worked with Michael Gasper when he contested. I worked with Felix Finiste, and I also worked with Alvina Reynolds. So the whole political dimension is not something that is new to me. I understand the Babonneau constituency. But apart from politics, as you said, I've been involved in education. I gave 34 years of my life to education, teaching in the Babonneau community. I taught at the Babonneau Primary School, very young age. And later on, I moved on to La Guerre. I taught there for almost a decade. And then I moved on to Foraso, where I became principal. So the Babonneau people have had the best part of me in helping educate the children. In addition to education, I've been a very strong community activist. I have been involved in so many different organizations in Babonneau, helped develop Babonneau. Even the multipurpose center, when you drive into Babonneau, you see the biggest building out there. I was instrumental in working with an organization that actually got government to get this building set up. I managed the building for 10 years. I was part of the Young Farmers Club. I was part of the social club, the Babonneau Day. In fact, all my life went into giving voluntary service and serving people. So politics to me is a continuation of what I've always done in the Babonneau community.
Right. Now, I mean, I think persons would have a perfect understanding as to why you've selected that constituency to represent, given your attachment and your familiar links with it. But then persons would then want to know, why the St. Lucia Labour Party? Why did you decide to go up on a St. Lucia Labour Party ticket?
The St. Lucia Labour Party is a very easy choice to make. If you look at the party, you would have seen that this is the party that has really brought in some level of development of human resource in St. Lucia. People like infrastructure, but when you develop people, you have them until life. You have them for life. And I believe in developing people, and that is why I give all my time working in education. And in addition to working in education as a teacher, I went out there and I started representing the teachers in my capacity as president and officer of the Teachers Union. And I fought for the teachers. In fact, right now I'm calling on them for their support because I'm going into politics to represent them. I'm going into politics to represent the young people, to represent women, especially those in poverty, the men who have been disadvantaged in certain areas, the elderly. In fact, I embrace students, I embrace parents, I embrace the young people, because the nature of the work that I have done is that. So Labour Party is one who believes in health, it believes in education, and all that has to do with development of people. And because of that, it was very easy for me to gravitate and stay with the St. Lucia Labour Party.
And of course, you just mentioned as well, I mean, growing up as a woman, Barbano had one female representative in the past, again, Alvina Reynolds for the St. Lucia Labour Party. But we have not really seen that number of females putting themselves up for elective politics. Yes, they're playing the very critical, perhaps bedrock role in the background. They're making a major contribution. They're the ones who perhaps are doing a lot of the hard work in terms of getting people out to vote, in terms of campaigning. But in terms of the forefront, we still find that a number that females are shying away or have shied away in the past in terms of taking that lead responsibility. Do you see yourself as a vanguard in that regard? Do you see yourself as giving greater hope as well to females to actually take up that call?
Right, that is one of the objectives, because Calix, if you know, having been involved in the teachers union, I actually engage in what you call politics, not party politics, not the partisan politics we have, but the unions have their own politics. And most of the political parties emerge from the trade union movement. And in the teachers union, which is about 85 years since it has been in existence, this union has only had 3 women who have emerged as president. And I was the last person who became president in 1996. And it is telling you that although the teaching population has about 70 to 80% are women,
right.
So the same thing happens in the political arena, that you have the women doing all the work, and who they elect the men. And that comes with the kind of way that women were socialized. They were socialized in believing that, well, they are not leaders, they are not strong enough. And some people have argued that politics is so dirty, you have to be careful as a lady, you have to stay away from that. So all these things actually cause women to stay away from politics. So I'm hoping that my involvement in the political arena will encourage a lot of young women to come forward and give representation. Just like the men can do, the women can do. All they have to do is prepare themselves, develop the confidence, develop the competency, and give effective representation.
All right. Now, I mean, Barbado is one of those vast, physically vast districts, and I think it's also possibly maybe like the 3rd largest constituency by population as well. It is a very, very difficult task, isn't it, to represent a constituency of that size and extent and breadth?
It may not be as difficult as some people may see if you put structure and systems in place, because Babono has several little communities, and all communities want equal attention, they want love, they want facilities. And I actually understood the Babono constituency well, because in the earlier years, I used to be part of what we call the Mothers and Fathers Central Committee. And as a central committee, we had mothers and fathers groups in every little community in Babono. So we had about 16 to 17 mothers groups and 16 to 17 fathers groups. And with that kind of structure, we were able to engage in development in each of the communities. So they got their community halls, they got water, they got roads, they got electricity, you know. So you are able to target the communities. Those that are lagging behind, you provide greater support. Those that are more advanced, you allow them to roll. But if you put structure and system in place, you can give Babono very good representation.
Right. And of course, what would you say are some of the major concerns at this point in terms of the Babono constituency? I mean, we've seen we've seen generally, I would say, for the past couple of years, Babono seems to have been electing candidates in the government. I mean, there may be one or two exceptions, but generally, Babonneau has always been represented by somebody in government. And so as a result of that, one could say maybe that a lot of the needs have been taken care of over the years. Do you think that is the case? Is there still a great deficit in terms of needs in that constituency?
Well, when Alan Bousquet was there, he stayed quite a while. And we actually call it an Alan Bousquet seat. It's not so much a UWP seat. Because since Alan left, Labour Party has captured the seat 4 times. So you cannot always define Babonneau as a UWP seat. It was Alan Bousquet. And Alan Bousquet did quite a bit of work in terms of the infrastructure, build some schools, and provided some facilities. And Labour Party came in. Labour Party built a Babonneau secondary school. They built a fire station, and they actually improve on the roadworks and the electricity. In fact, you can see from Gara going up to Debara, Labour Party put street lights along that long stretch where they have no houses, but at least the people needed the lights to go to their homes. And they improved the infrastructure and improved education. They repaired the health center. They built a new health center at Laguerre. So there are a lot of things that the Labour Party engage in trying to advance the situation. But what is of greatest concern to me is that Babonneau is an agricultural community. It has thrived on agriculture. And we find that a lot of the older persons now are moving away from the farm. But those who are still active in farming, they are complaining that they are not getting the kind of support that they were expecting, knowing that the parliamentary rep is the Minister of Agriculture, and he's also trained in agriculture. So they were expecting much better representation in the field of agriculture. So that is something that I want to pay close attention to, because right now with the COVID-19 situation, you find that people have gone back to the land. They have gone back to agriculture. And Babonneau has been the breadbasket for St. Lucia for a while. And we need to ensure that we continue along that line to create employment for the people and to create a livelihood for them.
And of course, although you mentioned agriculture, I mean, in terms of diversification, we've heard over time, on some occasions, projects being touted as being potentially transformational for the Babonneau constituency. We've heard about, at one point, there was the Harlequin project with a hotel and golf course, and there have been other proposals for other parts of the constituency. Babonneau, of course, has this very broad coastline, from Marquis to Grand Anse to even down into Louvet. Do you see that potential being realized, do you think, under a Virginia Albert-Poyotte administration or time in Babonneau, diversifying that economy?
Well, it is necessary that we diversify, but the issue right now is when we look at the COVID-19 situation and where St. Lucia has found itself. Right now we have the parliamentarians in Parliament discussing the issue. So now we are outside of Parliament talking about the issue. So they are in the House and we are out of the House, but we are still talking about what is important for the people. With COVID-19, tourism and hotels and so on has its place. But right now, come the next 5 years, we have to rebuild St. Lucia. We have to let St. Lucians gain back their integrity, because we have seen that COVID has actually taken the poor to the extreme poor level. So people who are poor will become extreme poor. They were actually fighting to get out of poverty. COVID-19 has sent them right back into it. And we see the rich, they are getting richer. So the gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider. So this is something we have to address. And looking at the future for Babonneau and tourism, we have to look at areas where we can create employment for the people so that they can rebuild their lives, they can rebuild their future. So I will not rule out hotel possibility in the Babonneau area, but I know the parliamentary rep has mentioned that a few times, but people have dismissed that as election gimmick, that anytime election is coming up, some big statement is made about tourism and big hotel. But we are saying that let us do something that is very practical, that will help the people rebuild their livelihood.
Right. And certainly a lot of potential for heritage tourism, no doubt. I mean, you've got some old mills, like in the Marquee area, for instance. I know you already have your sky rides up at Chasse. Of course, the potential for turtle watching down in Granand. So there's a lot of potential for an ecotouristic time. Yeah.
As well as Babono has been a community that's rich in culture, but we notice the cultural aspect is dying.
Like your solo.
The support is not there.
Right.
Right. So basically, I'm saying that I'm offering myself to put on the agenda the issues that are of interest to the people in Babono.
You
and
touched
I'm also representing the wider St. Lucian community.
Right. You touched on the issue of COVID-19, of course, but currently I'm just looking at the statistics right about now, which is available on the St. Lucia government dashboard, where you can see a map which gives you an idea of incidence rates for various countries. And I think right now, Babono finds itself in that northern belt where we're seeing the highest concentration of cases of COVID-19, and I think in the Babono constituency, well, the most recent data that they've put out indicates at least 124 cases in that area, an incidence rate of 110 for every 10,000 people. How are people coping right about now? What is the mood? Are people satisfied at this moment regarding what's in place in terms of protocols? Are they following the guidelines? What's the general mood regarding COVID-19?
The general mood with the COVID-19 is one where some people are approaching the COVID-19 on a partisan level, and they were not really reasoning out what is practical and what should be done. And once we approach the issue from a partisan level, we will not succeed in fighting the COVID virus. I think the virus is one that will attack whether you are red, whether you are yellow, whether you are UWP, whether you are Labour. It doesn't care about your party affiliation. So I think what we have to do is to put things in place that will represent and give service and support to the citizens of St. Lucia, regardless of partisan. And some people who couldn't care less say, oh, it's the people, and they were supporting some of the things that the government was doing, which we find was not correct. The virus has hit close to their doorstep, and now they realize that it is not about the government and those who are against the government. It is let us do the right thing for the people. And one of the challenges we have in fighting COVID is the lack of trust between the people and the government. The people are not sure that the information that the government is passing out to them is genuine, is accurate, and is scientific. And unless they can overcome that level of trust is important for us to fight this virus. It is not a virus of one party or not. It's a virus that is coming to attack the rich, the poor, the man, the woman, the child, those in the north, those in the south. It does not care. And I think we have to put the people's lives first. We have to put what is important first, and our health is critical, and we have to educate the people properly.
And that, you mentioned education, so very critical there, because you find sometimes that persons, they will go to a commercial area, they'll go to the supermarket, they will go to castries in town, they'll wear their masks in those types of environments, but then when they head back home, sometimes to their communities, you don't see that level of strict following of mask wearing and social distancing, because people tend to feel more at ease. They believe that they're away from people they don't know. It becomes a lot easier to drop your guard and to believe that your neighbor is fine and everybody is fine. Are you seeing that as a major challenge and concern right now in
Yes.
communities in Babonneau?
That is exactly what is happening, because the people are playing dominoes. They are there on the table. They are not 6 feet apart. They are talking to each other, and they are there slamming their dominoes. Mm-hmm. They take a drink. They are there talking to each other. They have the mask under their chin, and they are there talking to each other. So I see that as a lack of education. The people understood the magnitude of the problem, and they have not understood what they have to do, and they have to be consistent all the time. It is not something that it is okay. The virus don't know whether you're family.
Right.
All they know is move from one person to the next. So once we are aware of that, we will actually protect ourselves. There's a gentleman who came by me and he told me, well, he's very strong and he can fight the virus.
Okay.
I said, no, but let me tell you something. It is not about you. If you can fight the virus, that does not mean your neighbor can fight the virus. You have to protect your neighbor. So when you wear the mask, you are not only protecting yourself for if in case your neighbor has the virus, but you are actually protecting your neighbor for if in case you have the virus. So we must not be selfish and only think of ourselves and just dismiss others. If we have that kind of collaboration, working together, concern about each other, that kind of community togetherness and support of each other, we are going to overcome this virus in St. Lucia.
Now, Dr. Virginia Albert-Poyotte, we're going to have to take a break at this point in time for our weather news. But when we come back, I definitely want to get more into the issue of education. I mean, the Barbano Secondary School, for instance, was one of those cases very early on where I believe we saw some cases being reported out of there regarding COVID. I want to talk about the general response as to where we are at right now in terms of dealing with COVID-19 and our education sector. And, of course, touch on some agriculture issues as well. So be right back after this. And welcome back to the lunchroom. I'm your host, Alex George Jr., and we are speaking with a veteran educator and political hopeful, Dr. Virginia Albert-Poyotte, who has put her hat in the ring for the constituency of Barbano for the St. Lucia Labour Party for the upcoming general election. Dr. Virginia Albert-Poyotte, we certainly have seen a lot of interest being placed on the issue of education in the time of COVID. We've seen school closures for the better part of last year. We have also, of course, seen an attempt at the reopening of school back in September. It was closed shortly afterwards in October as a result of a rise in numbers there. Again, another attempt to reopen schools, this time in the midst of clearly a significant outbreak for this term. And then, of course, within less than a week after, the closure of schools. It's been a very, very hard time for teachers and for students, has it not been?
Yes, definitely. Can you hear me, Alex?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. It has been a tough time for the teachers. And the sad thing is that the president of the Teachers Union, Mr. Don Howell, he did advise the ministry to allow schools to remain closed because they were able to assess the situation on the ground. And they noticed that nothing much had changed. So they were wondering why the ministry was asking them to go back to face-to-face classroom teaching. And the ministry ignored the advice and actually went ahead and reopened schools. And they were proven right that in 2 shake and a break, they had to go back and close schools. And quite a few teachers contracted the virus. Some students contracted the virus. In fact, Barbano Secondary was among the first schools they mentioned where the virus became present there. So they were very, very correct. And that is why education policymakers must respect the practitioners, the persons on the ground. They are the experts because they understand the situation a lot better than those who sit in the high offices and just put out policies and rules. So in that case, you find that the children have gone back into the home. The parents are not ready. They do not have the devices for them to do the virtual learning and teaching, and it is posing a serious challenge for the education system. The mistake that the United Workers' Party made was to ignore the policy the Labour Party had 5 years ago, where they said that every child should have access to a laptop or a tablet for them to begin to learn and advance their education. And people thought that was nonsense, that was trivial, and as a result, now we have found ourselves faced with this demonic virus that is destroying our people's lives, destroying our education system, and our teachers are actually struggling to cope because they do not have the devices. And they did not get adequate training. In talking to teachers, they told me just a 1 week or 2 week crash course they gave them in order to prepare them for virtual teaching. A lot of parents cannot support their children at home. They cannot even supervise their children at home. So it is a serious challenge. And we can safely say that the children would have lost almost a year. A year of education, we may just call that lost.
We also see a lot of parents struggling in terms of just being able to maintain and support children at this time. I know a lot of children, for instance, would have been on part of the school feeding program. They, of course, are not physically at school anymore. How are parents, in your mind, coping with that aspect in terms of actually supporting children at home?
Well, the sad thing is that there's a parent who actually told me when she cooks food, the food that she cooks is not enough for all of them. So she allowed the children to eat and she stays without. A single mother, you know. She told me she has to stay without a meal in order to allow the children to be fed. And that is how tough it is. And I am saying that with the COVID-19, I expected government to place greater emphasis on people in terms of ensuring that they have food on the table, they can pay their bills, they have the support for their health. That is what people need right now to ride that COVID wave. And when things settle, we are hoping that things will settle in the not too distant future, that people can begin gradually to go back to normalcy. We see COVID as a hurricane that's really hitting St. Lucia. And now we have to run for cover. And to run for cover, we need food, we need to pay our bills, and we need to take care of our health. That is the most important thing. But with a government that does not put emphasis on human beings, on human development, they may put them, they actually put in the money in infrastructural work. They fill the road. You may have a nice road, but you cannot even drive on the road because you are so sick or you might be dead. So we are saying the emphasis should be more on salvaging lives and building the quality of life. And colleagues, I just want to draw your attention. Around this time of year, I get a little hype because in 1979, I was in the 59-day strike when teachers were fighting for better salaries and conditions of service. But at the same time, I'm telling you, if you check the records, I know you are very good at your research. I need to commend you that your program is one that has sought to educate St. Lucians a lot. It's not the roro and all the drama that goes on. You try your best to educate, and that is a very good form of education for St. Lucians. But when you look at the schools around, check how many schools the United Workers' Party has built, and check how many the Labour Party has built. Check how many fire stations the Labour Party built, how many police stations. The Labour Party built a prison so that people would get, they call it correctional facility and not a prison, that there should be some form of rehabilitation. We look at the issue of bridges. People who had to cross to go to their homes, they couldn't get there. Check what the Labour Party did. Check how many people the Labour Party helped to get university education. Send them to Cuba. They came back as doctors and dentists and they advanced their education. Take care of their eyes so that they can see better. There are a lot of things Labour Party did to develop the human body, the human, the person. And these are the people now, we need to re-educate them so that they understand the value of the human resource.
And you're saying that, of course, and it's interesting because right now, one of the constituencies where you are seeing, roads in very interesting places being developed right about now is in the constituency of Babonneau. And I do remember noting is it the Devara to Louvet Road, which is being constructed or currently. In fact, I've noticed as well the Marquis Road, which is perhaps a little bit more significant in terms of the amount of agriculture that's going on in that area. But that is certainly being done. A number of roads in Babonneau are currently being developed or rebuilt. Do you think that that is going to be a deal breaker in the coming election?
Let me tell you something about the roads. I spoke to somebody who actually worked on the road. The person is employed on the road. And I told the person, well, what I noticed you all are doing, I thought you all would have widened the road a little place there where it's very narrow. The person told me, don't worry, that's a cover-up. That's just a cover-up to siphon money. That's what the person told me while I was driving on. And the person is actually employed there. So they see that as a means of, I don't know, with infrastructure and work. There is a lot of drama that goes on behind the scene, and you cannot always identify it. But the road itself is, some of the new roads that are built, people are actually speculating that there are hidden motives behind these roads. And the people on the ground, they are listening and they are hearing what's going on. It's not so much roads to facilitate the residents and so on. There are other agendas. But the other roads, these are roads that were there already. It's just a matter of resurfacing the roads and putting drainage. And what is sad about it is the fact that the government has engaged in roadworks throughout the country, not just Babono, throughout the country. You notice that they actually engage in the type of projects where not many women are employed. The women are complaining. I went in the Babono, they tell me, but with the roadworks, we are not employed. We're not getting work in the roadworks. And I said, well, in my area, in my community, they are actually resurfacing the road there. And I only see two women. One has a sign says stop, and the other one has go. So where is the work for women? And they told me, and the lady in the Faso area told me, as a woman, we work for only 40 hours a day. And on the road, they are paying $120 a day. So that's 3 times what we're working for. So all these are things that people are checking to see who is benefiting the most from that road. And some of the contractors they come with their own workers. It's not so many people from the area who are employed. A handful of people do the labor work. But at the end of the day, I don't think that will salvage the situation because the people can see through that set of road projects that's going on all over the country.
Now, earlier on, I was discussing in terms of the politics of it all, and I mean, we don't have very much time left, of course, but you are going up against, as I said, a sort of a veteran in the constituency. He's gone up 3 times already, and Babono since 1982 has appeared to be a constituency that has tracked, that has mirrored the government in power. So the winning party has always held the seat of Babono. In the case of Babono, however, I think I'm looking at the numbers for the 2016 general election, and the St. Lucia Labour Party, well, the United Workers' Party won that seat with a margin of 1,305 votes, and it was effectively a loss for the Labour Party. You guys lost 464 votes between 2011 and 2016. And the UWP gained 843 votes between 2011 and 2016. So you've got a very tall order on your hands in terms of swinging a fairly large number of votes there in the upcoming general election.
Well, on paper, it looks a very tall order. And somebody who is involved in statistics and politics will tell you, don't take anything for granted. You know? A large margin can be cut to 0 in 2 shake and a break. But what I'm saying is I have studied these figures and I have understood exactly what caused the fluctuation because I'm on the ground, I'm listening, and I'm hearing the people talking. And I am very confident that we can work around these figures.
And certainly losing up to, 500 persons between 2011 and 2016? I suppose your mission right now is to certainly try to get those votes back.
Well, that is definitely one of my prime targets, and then to close the gap after I have regained those support that we lost. And from walking on the ground, I may not tell you everything that I pick up. We understood exactly what happened and why we lost that kind of support. And I am actually working on that. And we are engaging the people, and the people are actually being very frank as to why they felt the results came out in that way. And the increase in votes, we understood exactly how it happened, and we are also working in that area too. So I understand the Babono constituency very, very well. I study the figures very well. I understand the figures on the ground. I know how to map it out. And it's a matter of engaging and trying to win hearts and minds, because people depend a lot on whether they can buy votes. And I think that people are seeing through that. They realize that those who actually sold their votes, they were ignored for 5 years, and now they are coming back to buy their votes again. So we hope we can do sufficient education to help the people see through those things.
I mean, we are now about, 55 months into a current administration of the United Workers' Party. There's not very much time left, really, in terms of the term, a 60-month term. So elections could be any time right about now. But at the same time, we're also seeing a significant spread of COVID-19, over 2,000 confirmed cases, over 1,000 active cases. The numbers are rising. We're seeing deaths coming forward. We're seeing a very strained hospital system. Are you fearful that, that may in fact scare persons away from the polls? Do you fear that we may see what happened in Jamaica, for instance, where we saw a very low voter turnout in the upcoming election?
Well, what is important is that we need to energize our people to go to the polls. And once they are sufficiently energized, they go to the supermarket and they go to the bank and they haven't contracted the virus. So why would they contract it when they take the line 6 feet away from each other to go and cast their ballot? So these are the things that we have to get them sufficiently motivated, that the sacrifice that they are going to make there will be for the future and the future of the next generation.
Right. And just before you go, because we don't have very much time left, looking at your opponent, of course, he is the Minister for Agriculture. And, of course, we've seen some very difficult times with respect to agriculture in St. Lucia of late, in particular the banana sector. And with Windfresh, we've now understood it has gone into administration. That was the main export company responsible for sending bananas to the United Kingdom. What are you hearing from farmers? What is the especially banana farmers at this point in time in the Babonneau constituency? Are they concerned about the future of bananas? Where are they seeing things going?
Well, I've been engaging. In fact, that's the first sector I started engaging with, and I have maintained contact with them. And they are very angry. They are very disappointed. In fact, there is a group called the Fair Trade. They had a Fair Trade branch in Babonneau.
Right, National Fair Trade Association organization.
You said the Babonneau branch was one of the richest branches in the whole organization in St. Lucia. And they have raised that issue with me. I don't know if I can get the answer for them. But they also raised the issue about Windfresh and bananas. Babonneau, they have only about 3 active banana producers in Babonneau right now. And it's like there is no hope for Babonneau. They have gone into the root crops and vegetables and gentlemen planting cocoa and a few other diversification in terms of crops. But the issue that the people raise with me about Windfresh is they want to know why Windfresh is collapsing. They don't understand why. And the question they ask is that they understood that the St. Lucia is supposed to have a representative on the board.
Right, who is the minister, who is the chair?
What they are asking is that this representative is supposed to report to the minister if anything is going wrong in Windfresh. But it so happened that they discovered that the minister is the representative.
Right.
So they are asking me, is the minister reporting to himself? Because, you have to separate management and worker. And if you want to be the worker and you want to be the manager, so you are reporting everything to yourself. And they also asked about whether there is some kind of honorarium or stipend that they pay that would attract people to that. These are questions that people have asked. I don't want to say it's X amount, but the people are telling me that they are having big amount of honorarium was paid to the people on the board, and they want to know whether the minister was also getting that money. So all these issues are raised.
Well, very, very interesting indeed. But Dr. Virginia Albert-Poyotte, we are pretty much out of time here at the lunchroom, but we thank you so very much for sharing.
I enjoyed my lunch, colleagues.
But any parting words from you, though?
Well, what I'm doing is, what I'm saying, I want to say now is, I want to encourage the Babono people to remain focused. Let them know that I'm presenting myself to give them the best representation out there. My track record in Babono is very clear. I'm not coming to put up a show. I have demonstrated that I am committed to the development of Babono. The teachers out there, they know I'm committed to representing them, and I'm entering in politics to improve the quality of education in St. Lucia, and they know that I can give them representation. So therefore, the people who are actually going through the hard time there, I'm just telling them, be patient, help is coming their way.
All right, thanks so very much, Dr. Virginia Albert-Poyotte, a veteran educator, as well as former president of SLTU, former Caribbean Union of Teachers president, and of
I wasn't president, I was general secretary of the CUT.
Ah, so my apologies. And then you were representing something else as well. I can't remember what it was.
Regional coordinator for Education International.
That's right, Education International.
That has a 34 million member worldwide, yes.
Oh, indeed. So thank you so very much for clearing up that aspect.
Okay.
And again,
talking to you, I enjoyed the discussion.
Wonderful indeed. And thanks so very much for joining us. And of course, she is a Babono constituency hopeful as well in the upcoming general election. Thanks very much for listening to us. And